What is your best case scenario for this whole thing?
My best case scenario is 2030, zero hunger. When I say zero hunger, I want to be very clear. It is not just people having food. It's people being resilient enough that they can afford their own food.
Welcome to this episode of the Zero Hunger Project. I'm Stacia Neale, and today I have the great pleasure of interviewing my co-host, Suman Roy.
Hello, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on your own podcast, Suman.
Love it.
I am very excited to have this conversation with you because you have a lot to talk about.
I do.
So before we get started, you always do. I want to read your bio, though, because I think it's important for people to understand what you've been doing.
Certainly.
Okay, here we go. Suman Roy, with an extensive career in private, public, and not-for-profit sectors, has been an exceptional global business leader. Navigating a variety of causes, Suman's expansive career includes a passion for health, food security, and poverty reduction as a result of inequities in communities. Suman was a key consultant who helped write the first food strategy for the City of Toronto. He initiated Feed Scarborough to spread awareness and combat food apartheid with a vision of a hunger-free, resilient Scarborough. He is currently scaling up through Hunger-Free Canada and the Zero Hunger Project to ensure that no one goes to bed hungry. Over the last couple of years, Suman has championed the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations and represented Canada at the UN and FAO. Suman has won multiple global leadership awards, including CEO of the Year in Dubai and Visionary of the Year in Las Vegas, both from CXO, and recently Changemaker of the Year at the World Leaders Summit at Oxford University. Suman is a subject matter expert on global food security and has spoken at events on every continent. Okay, how does it feel to hear
now
yourself?
I'm in North America.
Right? Now you're in North America. How does it feel to hear that about yourself? I mean,
too much.
Does it feel like you've done all of that work?
No, miles to go before I sleep.
I guess so.
It's just the start.
Yeah. So, I have 6 million questions to ask you, but maybe the first thing is that you should tell us a little bit about the Zero Hunger Project.
Absolutely. So the Zero Hunger Project, it's our scaling up.
Mm-hmm.
And over this few episodes coming up, we're going to meet one of the guests who I heard at the FAO in Rome.
Right.
And one of the mantras that she kept on talking about is scale up, scale out, and scale deep.
Oh, I like that.
And it really stuck to me.
Yeah.
And when I was with Feed Scarborough, we were thinking of what's next with us post-COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that kept on in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So we started to do all three,
mm-hmm.
and that's how Zero Hunger Project was born.
Mm-hmm.
So what this is it's taken a global stand where we are getting other NGOs from around the world.
Yes.
And we are collecting their impacts. We are collecting their stories
mm-hmm.
and building their capacity so they are able to do more meaningful and deep work.
Amazing.
So it is really interesting because when I was in UN last July and I was sitting and listening to all the countries speak about what they are doing,
mm-hmm.
it was very evident to me that most of the data, most of the conversations are coming from their official government channels.
Right.
Rightfully so.
Yes.
But what I felt was missing was the grassroots voice and the grassroots impact.
Right.
That is rarely brought up on the tables where UN people in the UN sits or FAO sits.
Right.
So that was the main reason we formed this coalition of organizations,
mm-hmm.
so we can have those conversations, talk about the impact we are creating on the ground,
right,
and changing lives.
Yeah, it's exciting.
It is.
It's exciting.
Certainly.
So how are you doing this in relation to the United Nations? Like, how does this all go together?
So there are some official ways and some unofficial ways.
Okay, as there always are with you, Suman.
Totally. So unofficial ways, which is what we are doing, is the Sustainable Development Goals, which the UN has put together, which we believe that if it is really upheld
mm-hmm.
properly, we will be able to end poverty and end hunger at some point.
Right.
But everybody needs to work together on it.
Yeah.
So what we are doing in Canada especially, and around the world with the Zero Hunger Project, putting the lens of the Sustainable Development Goals in all our programs
mm-hmm.
and letting the community members know about the SDGs.
Mm-hmm.
A great example, I wear the SDG pin all the time because
Yeah.
I strongly believe in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I cannot tell you how many times people said, "Oh, this is so cute. Where did you get this brooch?"
You have a lifesaver on your lapel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we see that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what we wanted to change: is let people know about SDGs,
Mm-hmm.
what they are, why is it important, and why we are all talking about it. So that is the unofficial way how we are advancing those.
Right.
Officially, in 2024, I was invited to be an official Canadian delegate at the United Nations.
No big deal.
No big deal. It's just small.
Okay, whatever.
At the high level political forum, which was an amazing experience. I'm hoping that I get invited again this year. Fingers crossed.
Yes.
I didn't do,
we need
anything
to call
terrible.
somebody?
I didn't do anything terrible.
I didn't do anything terrible.
So for them to kick me out.
I didn't steal anything.
No.
That's good.
I didn't steal anything.
Yes.
I didn't punch anybody.
That's good.
It's all good.
It's important.
So fingers crossed we are able to do that, and because we can advance more conversations.
Yeah.
And this year, our organization is filing for getting a direct status from the United Nations, the ECOSOC, as an NGO affiliated with them.
Yeah.
So that will give us a space to have some very meaningful conversations.
That's so rad. So rad. Let's back this up a little bit, this whole adventure you've been on. Tell me about the first time you woke up and said, you know what I should do is open up a whole fleet of food banks and look after my community.
Yeah, that actually happened just like that.
Yeah.
People might think it's a joke, but it's not. It actually happened just like that. 2020 March, the whole world was shutting down.
Yes.
3 days after UN announced, the WHO announced this as a global pandemic, COVID, Canada started shutting down too. And when it was shutting down, I saw one night when I was just about to go to bed, a Facebook post from our local food bank saying they are shutting down temporarily and for the right reasons.
Sure.
They were manned by seniors. They were in a church basement and they did not want their volunteers to be affected.
Yeah.
So they shut down for the right reason. But one thing that came to my mind right away is the people who go to the food banks.
Yeah.
They go because they're most vulnerable.
They're
and
already
they need
in trouble.
And the best of times.
Yes.
And now we are going into a global pandemic.
Yeah.
That did not make sense to me.
Right.
So the next morning I woke up. I probably couldn't sleep most of the night.
Right.
So next morning I woke up, called a few of my neighbors.
Yes.
And said, hey, we need to do something.
Yeah.
And all our neighbors said, okay, what?
Yeah.
So we said, no problem. Those who can, give me some money.
Yeah.
And we're going to go to No Frills, get some food, and we're going to drop it off at people who need it.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Yeah.
So we did that. We put some money on a table. We went to No Frills, shopped, enough for around 30 families. And then we came down and said, who are these people?
Yeah.
We don't know who to give it to.
Yeah.
So we called up the food bank and said, hey, give us the name of the people who we can drop some food off. And they said, sorry, confidentiality.
Right.
We're not able to do that.
Yeah.
Then we were like, okay, now what do? We have the food.
Yeah.
So we put a social media call out. If anybody is desperate and needs help, let us know. Within 24 hours, we had over 1,000 people across Scarborough reach us.
Yeah.
It was very evident that putting money on a table, going to No Frills,
is not going to do
is not going to cut it.
No.
So we needed to think outside the box. We didn't have a space.
Right.
Literally in my backyard, I was willing to set up a tent to do that.
So I've known you for several years at this point, and what I know to be true about you is that none of those things are a deterrent for you.
No. The only challenge was I did not realize that if I leave food under a tent in my backyard, raccoons are going to have a feast.
Oh, Suman.
So
they
then
don't
I
have
figured
raccoons
out, exactly. So then I figured out, okay, no problem. I'll bring the food inside the house at night.
Yeah.
Holly said, either food or you, one of you come inside the house.
Suman's wife, but yes.
Yeah. So I said, okay, that's not going to work.
No.
So we need to be creative and figure out. And luckily, there were other community organizations in our community in Scarborough who closed during the pandemic.
Yeah.
They offered us space and we never looked back. And I certainly thought COVID will be over in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
The curve will be flattened and we'll be back to normal.
Yeah.
So I did it for 2 weeks. And 5 years later, now we have almost 15 full-time staff.
Yeah.
And serve around 8,500 people every week with access to food. I'm so blessed that I'm able to do it.
Yeah.
But it's sad that many people in a developed country like Canada needs this help.
Well, so I have two things. I want to talk about the fact that you started off this whole sort of food adventure as a chef, which I think is an important component. And also that you're trying to put yourself out of a job.
Yep, 100%.
Okay, so talk about those two things.
Absolutely. So being somebody who's been in the food business, food justice and food insecurity business, we know that the food banks are not a solution.
Right.
Food banks are the problem. The reason it is a problem, because when you talk about food banks, especially with the people of power, they feel that if they make a donation to food banks or do something for the food banks, they have done enough for food security.
Right.
That is where the problem is, not food bank itself.
Right.
Food banks are band-aids.
Yes.
And it's very needed, especially in today's world, till we get to a point.
It's a triage, though, right?
Absolutely.
It's, we talked about this in a different episode, but it's the difference between development and aid. It's going in 100%. And setting up infrastructure versus responding to a crisis in the moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Chaos versus calm.
That's right.
As we say it.
Yes.
So that is why that is the reason why I think food banks are the problem.
Yeah.
But once again, we cannot just shut down food banks without having proper process, proper programs, proper support in place.
Yeah.
So with Feed Scarborough, from day one, we have 3 layers of programming.
Right.
Our first layer is emergency food program, like the food banks, the hot meal program. Mm-hmm. Then we have the programs that actually build resilience in the community.
Right.
Like help our community members start their own business.
So it's capacity building.
Capacity building and building them resiliency. Get them training so they can find a job. Get them in front of employers. Like this morning, I heard from an employer who hired 3 of my our students who were our volunteers and our clients.
Yeah.
So it's amazing.
That.
Now they don't need to come to our food bank to collect food because now they have a meaningful job.
Right.
So our second layer is doing programs like that.
Yeah.
And our final and third layer is research and policy development.
Right.
So we work with TMU, UFT, Centennial College, all these campuses around here, and we come up with various policy recommendations, which then we actively work with all 3 levels of government to pitch them and see if there is a take.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah. And we believe that if all 3 works together, we will end hunger at some point.
I mean, yes, it's an incredible goal to aim your, all of your resources toward. Tell me how being a chef influenced you to do all of this.
So I've worked in many different places around my career.
Yes.
Starting from the President of the United States.
Yes.
To the Vancouver Olympics, to being a corporate chef for Campbell Soup.
Yeah.
So I've done a lot of different, but one thing that I always kept in mind, it's always fun to create a $100 plate of food. But when you know that 1 in 5 Canadians do not have just the basics, that $100 plate of food makes no sense to me.
Right.
And that is why even as a chef, I always had another element of me from the side of my desk that I worked on food policy, I worked on food strategies, I worked on food security on the side.
Yeah.
And now it is my regular job.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that, and of course, learning about food was important.
Yeah.
And now we have this place called Food Hall, which is a food court.
Yes.
That is in North York.
Yeah.
Where we train newcomers and immigrants and into how to get into the food business. And honestly, if I wasn't a chef, I don't think I would do that project.
Right.
But it's been just over a year. We have been running that program in partnership with the City of Toronto. And the stories we hear in our first cohort, almost all our entrepreneurs, we call them entrepreneurs, not students.
Yes.
They were all refugees, new to Canada. They were in shelters. And they came to our program. And now all of them have great jobs. Some of them are getting their families from back home. That program changed their lives.
There's nothing about this that I don't love.
Yeah.
Like love, right?
It is. And that is why every day when I wake up and get out of bed, I never have the feeling, oh, it's Monday.
Yeah.
No, I have that feeling on Friday when I'm going to bed.
Right.
Oh, it's Friday. Why can't I go to work tomorrow? What's happening?
Yeah.
But it's a very different feeling because you know you're making that difference.
Yeah, massive difference. Huge difference. Okay, so then you decide, what I should do now is start a podcast.
Yes.
Okay, so tell us about that.
So one of the things that we always understand, at least I strongly believe, that unless and until we really recognize a problem,
Right.
we can never fix it.
Right.
And when spending a lot of time last year, especially at the UN, FAO, and other spaces, one thing I realized when we talk about developed countries like
Yes.
Canada, like US, like European, Western European countries,
Yeah.
the word hunger is never spoken about.
Interesting. What do they use instead?
They talk about Africa when it's hunger.
Ah, I see.
They talk about Asia when it's hunger.
Right.
But they do not talk about developed countries
Right.
having the problem of hunger and poverty.
Yep. I understand that.
And the reality is we have a huge issue, not only in Canada,
Yeah.
in almost every developed countries.
Mhm.
In US currently, so-called rich country,
Yeah.
have enough money, almost 13% of their population are food insecure.
So that's 13% of what are we saying? 350 million people?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's just in US.
Right.
So we have a crisis
Yeah.
in the global north.
Yeah.
And we are not talking about it.
Right.
And that was kind of my main motivation to get into this podcast is we want to bring out the challenges because we want solutions.
Yeah.
We don't want to just cover up the developed countries
Yeah.
problems and push it all on the developing countries.
Why don't you think we're talking about it in the global north? What
I think
is
a
this
lot of it is the
stigma?
political will.
Okay.
That's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
I have no basis to back it up.
Yeah.
But it's just my personal opinion that countries like where we are sitting right now
Yes.
and developed countries,
Yeah.
they want to show how great they are.
Oh, it's a show of force, show of strength.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
they don't want to talk about the bigger, deep-rooted problems that we
Right.
have.
Yeah.
We have heard it in the indigenous communities, not only in Canada, but you talk about Australia, New Zealand, US,
Yeah.
all of there.
Yeah.
The challenges we face. I'm sure you know this, but many of our audience might not know this. Even today, in 2025, April, in Canada, there's a big population, North Canada, who do not have clean drinking water.
Oh, I mean, and if you
It's
don't know about that,
ridiculous.
you need to find out immediately.
Exactly.
The oppressive conditions of what's happening in the north of this country is absolutely appalling.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
so there is a lot of these challenges which we don't want to talk as much in the
Yeah.
global platform.
Yeah.
Because it makes us look bad.
Well, it's shameful.
It is very
what it is.
shameful.
Nobody wants
Exactly.
to go on a global stage and admit that they're failing a subsection of the population as badly as we are.
While we are busy trying to
Right.
talk about how another country is doing terrible when it comes to feeding their people.
Right.
So I think with our podcast, over the next how many episodes, you will see that we are having those kind of conversations.
Yeah.
We're going to have some solutions come up
Mhm.
because in almost every episode, we have an expert in their own field
Yeah.
giving us some tips.
Yeah.
And my goal is at the end of this, we're going to record all of those
Yeah.
points
Yeah.
and make policy papers
Yeah.
to give not only to the Canadian government,
Yeah.
but to other governments around the world where we see those challenges and see what works.
Well, I'll tell you, having those conversations with these people has been incredibly enlightening for me. My background is in sociology, but there are lots of things about food security that I know nothing about. So having conversations with these people has been so far incredibly enlightening. And I find it very hard not to get subsumed by this. It's a daunting problem, and there are lots of things about it that are incredibly depressing. It's really hard, and it's why most people can't take it in. They can't take it in. There's too much stuff going on already.
Absolutely.
And so we try in these conversations to not only talk about what the problem is, but also come up with some viable solutions that can be done by individual people in order to help.
Absolutely.
Right? And
also
help themselves and
governments.
help everybody else. Yeah.
Absolutely. And also governments. There's some great stories around the world that we know which governments have done some
Right.
amazing work. Brazil, for example.
Yeah.
They had their version of zero hunger
Yeah.
in 2003.
Yeah.
Ethiopia, 2005.
Yeah.
Finland. It's like there are countries, Sweden.
Yeah.
They have done some amazing work in their countries. Why can't the rest of the world learn from them?
Particularly when you consider a country like Ethiopia. I mean, I used to work at, Sick Kids Foundation, and we went and did a medical mission to Ethiopia to help train doctors. And when we were there were 44 million children and 4 pediatric surgeons because the entire population was decimated by a famine. So the fact that they've come back from that to achieve zero
Exactly.
hunger in 2005 is unbelievable.
It is. There's some amazing programs that's out there. We just need political will
Yes.
to understand them, learn from them,
Yeah.
see what worked, what did not work,
Yeah.
and make it better.
And so the hope is that we're trying to get in front of as many people as possible to sort of elevate the
100%.
conversation.
100%.
And to that end, and also because you brought up the food court, I wanted to talk to you about what happened last week. Something else happened last week. What happened?
It did. I launched a book.
Yes, a book
called the Zero Hunger
Here it
Project.
is. Yeah.
And
in your spare time, you wrote a book. So.
Yeah, just between my sleeping hours.
Well, to be fair, you spend an enormous amount of time on airplanes, so you don't have a whole lot else to do.
So this book is primarily to talk about global hunger.
Yes.
And some of the great stories of these successes that I was talking about, like Finland, like Brazil, like Ethiopia, kind of talk about them and see what we learn from them.
Right.
My hope with this is not only it's just anybody and everybody who has any interest in understanding hunger would read it and find a lot of learning, how they can make a difference, but also to the powers of be, who has the power to really make policy changes. That is what this book is also focused on.
Nice.
Is just learn from each other and we can make a difference.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
So yeah, we launched it. This book is forwarded by Bob Ray, Honorable Bob Ray, who's the president of ECOSOC. And also,
what is ECOSOC for people that don't know?
So ECOSOC is the arm of the United Nations.
Yes.
Who actually own the Sustainable Development Goals.
Okay, important.
Very important.
Yeah.
So Bob Ray is the president of ECOSOC, but also he's the permanent representative of Canada at the United Nations.
Right.
So he's an important person.
Yeah, it's kind of an important guy.
And so it was forward written by him. And I got a lot of motivation from a lot of people like Bob Ray to write this book and ask them a lot of questions.
Amazing. That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's a big deal. Okay, two questions I always like to ask people when I'm interviewing them are, what is your best case scenario for this whole thing?
My best case scenario is 2030, zero hunger. It's not just, when I say zero hunger, I want to be very clear. It is not just people having food.
Right.
It's people being resilient enough that they can afford their own food.
Right.
So there's a difference.
One of the people with whom we were speaking in the last little while was talking about food that is relative to them, relative to their culture, that they deem for them, for their families, that they want to eat, right? It's not just like any kind of food. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The culturally appropriation food, because food not only, and the cultural appropriate food, it not only helps to nourish them, but also for their mental health.
Of course.
That is very important.
And their sense of dignity and autonomy. And I mean, it's important on so many different fronts.
I tell the story. When I first immigrated to Canada 25 years ago, I literally came with nothing.
Yeah.
And I slept on the side of the street and I went to a food bank. I was hungry. And when I got out of the food bank, I looked at the stuff I got. And I was like, I'm in a rich country. And why are they giving me dry pieces of bread that I'm going to break my teeth in? Yeah. So though I was hungry, I took that box and I threw it out in the garbage because I didn't want to eat that because it would break my teeth.
Well, and also there's I think a lot of processed foods. And
today I know that's called Kraft stuffing.
Oh, they give you a box of dried stuffing?
Like the Kraft stuffing box.
Yes, I know what it is. What are you supposed to do with that?
You're supposed to make stuffing at home, I guess. But the funny part is, the country I come from, stuffing is not a part of our diet.
No, of course
not. If
not.
they gave me an extra can of chickpeas, I would have known exactly what to do with it.
Sure.
So that story brings me back to the culturally appropriate food.
Yes.
Is how important it is. It's not just food. There's a lot more to it. Ugh. And that is, so my best case scenario is zero hunger by 2030. I am cautiously optimistic, but if it is not achieved, then at least we are close to where we are today.
Right.
I would at least like to get 70% in a zero hunger stage in 5 years.
And
easy job.
The reason why, just to be clear, the reason why 2030 is important is because that's the year that was set by the Sustainable Development Goals was 2030 30 that they would reach these 17 sustainable development goals.
100%.
And you'll learn in another episode how we're doing. It's not great, by the way. Spoiler alert, it's not that good.
No, and after I spent 2 weeks at the UN last July, when I
Yeah.
came back, somebody asked me, "Oh, how was it?"
Yeah.
And my answer was depressing.
Yeah.
That was exactly what it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Because it's not that the UN is depressing, but it was depressing to hear how terrible we are doing on the global stage
Yeah.
when it comes to poverty, food insecurity. The numbers are very high. The climate action,
Yeah.
like we are not doing well.
No, we're in big trouble.
And now with all the geopolitical and wars going on in different parts of the world,
yeah.
it's getting worse.
I know. And it's a lot to take in. And that's why people become apathetic, because honestly, your nervous system can only take so much as a human on the planet. So it's really important. And we keep talking about this in a lot of different episodes, but it's really important to do things at a community level where you seek out other like-minded people and find your squad of people that feel the same way about helping your family and your neighbors and your community and people you don't know. And this whole concept of taking down walls and building bigger tables. And you will feel empowered by doing something, and you will help people exponentially, people you will never, ever meet by doing those types of things. So yes, it's easy to get desensitized and sort of overwrought over what's happening globally. But if you can somehow push through that and connect with your neighbors, connect with your family, connect with, other like-minded people, there are lots of things you can do. I mean, you're evidence of that more than anybody.
And that is why the whole Zero Hunger Project, one of the main goals is the grassroots.
Yeah.
It's
so important.
Little step that you can take.
Yeah.
Because if everybody takes that one little step, we will achieve zero hunger.
Yeah, it's incredible. Okay, my last favorite question that I always ask people when I'm interviewing them is, you have done so many interviews all over the place with all kinds of people. What is the one question you never get asked that you wish people would ask you?
I should have known you were going to ask this question, didn't I?
I ask everybody else. I don't know why I wouldn't ask you.
I know. I didn't even think about that. But I think one of the things that I'm rarely asked is, what can the grassroots, the person who is living next door to me,
yeah,
what are the concrete steps they can take?
Okay.
And why is it that we always come back to policy? Of course, policy is very important to
yes, but it's
make
slow
these changes.
and it's burdensome and clunky.
It is slow. However, to get to the policy level, my next door neighbor can do one thing for sure.
Okay, what's that?
And that is when the people come knocking at your door asking for your vote.
Yeah.
Ask the right questions.
Yeah.
Ask what matters to them. Do not, and I say this very clearly because I think that is a big challenge, especially in a lot of democracies and countries like us.
Mm-hmm.
Do not get attached to the color that you always have belonged to.
Right.
Ask the questions, figure out the policies.
Yeah.
What is the next person willing to do for the betterment of this world?
Yeah.
And I think that is something that's really easy. You vote, you vote, you vote, you vote.
Yeah.
If you don't vote, that is one thing that is going to be a huge challenge, because the people who are not there for the right reasons are going to keep winning.
Yeah. Which is part of the problem, isn't it? I mean, isn't it? Yeah. Currently and historically and probably in the future. And so that's a lot of what we've been talking about, are the two ways that an individual can make change is with their pocketbook and with their vote, with their ballot.
Absolutely. Help your own, the food and everything that you purchase.
Yeah.
Support your own farmers.
Yes.
Support your small businesses.
Yeah.
Because they are the heart of your operation.
That's right.
So support them, go out and vote. And like I tell you, together, we will have zero hunger.
I hope that's true. I hope that's true. It's been such a nice time spending with you. And
Thank
I'm
you.
really proud to be involved in this. And I am proud to be your friend. And I'm here to help you achieve your goals any way that I can.
Thank you so very much. It's a pleasure to be on this podcast, as usual.
It's a pleasure to be on my own podcast.
Exactly. And talking to y'all, because I think this is important. Please send us any notes or any things that you feel like we should talk about, we should know, or even any guest that you really want to see on the show. Because we can probably make that happen. We'll try to.
He's pretty diligent, Suman is. Try and say no to him. See what happens.
Yeah, I don't.
That's why I'm sitting here.
I don't take no for an answer. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Follow.
Take care.
Take care.